The sun was setting over the village of Amah, casting a warm orange glow over the thatched roofs and the dusty streets. The villagers were busy preparing for the evening, some fetching water from the nearby stream, while others were tending to their farms. In the midst of this peaceful scene, a figure emerged from the distance, walking purposefully towards the village. He was a tall, imposing man with a stern expression, dressed in a crisp military uniform adorned with badges and insignia. This was Obi, a Nigerian soldier who had been away from his village for years, serving in the military. As Obi approached his family's compound, his heart swelled with excitement and nostalgia. He hadn't been home in a long time, and the thought of surprising his mother, Ezin, was almost too much to bear. He quickened his pace, his boots kicking up clouds of dust as he walked. The sound of children's laughter and playful shouts carried on the wind, mingling with the scent of cooking food and the distant lowing of cattle. But as Obi reached the entrance to his family's compound, his smile faltered. Something was amiss. His mother was standing outside, her face contorted in pain, while a young man towered over her, his eyes blazing with desperation. Without hesitation, Obi sprang into action, his military training kicking in. He strode towards the young man, his voice firm and commanding. "Let her go," Obi growled, his eyes locked on the young man. The young man turned, startled, and Obi saw the fear and desperation in his eyes. For a moment, the two men locked gazes, the air thick with tension. Then, in a flash of insight, Obi realized that the young man wasn't trying to harm his mother out of malice, but out of desperation. With a swift and precise motion, Obi subdued the young man, pinning him to the ground. The young man's struggle ceased, and he lay there, panting, as Obi stood over him, his eyes never leaving his mother's face. Ezin's eyes were filled with gratitude, and she rushed to Obi's side, embracing him tightly. "Thank you, my son," she whispered, her voice trembling. As Obi held his mother close, he couldn't help but notice the look of shame and defeat etched on the young man's face. Something about it tugged at his heartstrings, and he knew that this chance encounter would set off a chain of events that would change his life, and the lives of those around him, forever. As Obi held his mother close, he couldn't help but notice the look of shame and defeat etched on the young man's face. The young man, still pinned to the ground, looked up at Obi with a mixture of fear and desperation in his eyes. Obi's instincts as a soldier told him to be wary, to protect himself and his mother from potential harm. But as he looked into the young man's eyes, he saw something that gave him pause. The young man's eyes were not the eyes of a hardened criminal, but rather the eyes of someone who was desperate, someone who had been driven to extremes by circumstances beyond their control. Obi's grip on the young man's arms relaxed slightly, and he pulled him to his feet. "What's your name?" Obi asked, his voice firm but gentle. The young man hesitated, looking down at his feet before answering. "My name is Ikenna," he muttered. Obi's eyes narrowed slightly as he studied Ikenna's face. There was something familiar about him, something that tugged at Obi's memory. But he couldn't quite place it. "What were you doing to my mother?" Obi asked, his voice firm but controlled. Ikenna looked up, his eyes flashing with desperation. "I wasn't trying to hurt her, I swear," he said, his voice shaking. "I was just trying to get some money. I've been struggling to survive, and I didn't know what else to do." Obi's expression softened slightly as he listened to Ikenna's words. He could see the desperation in the young man's eyes, the fear and the uncertainty. And in that moment, Obi knew that he couldn't just turn Ikenna in. He had to help him. But as he looked at Ikenna, Obi's mind was racing with conflicting emotions. A part of him wanted to shoot the thief, to punish him for his actions. But another part of him, a part that was driven by compassion and empathy, wanted to help him, to give him a second chance. Obi's hand instinctively went to his gun, his finger hovering over the trigger. He could feel the weight of the gun in his hand, the familiar sensation of metal and leather. For a moment, he was torn, unsure of what to do. But then, he looked into Ikenna's eyes, and he saw something that gave him pause. He saw a glimmer of hope, a spark of humanity that refused to be extinguished. And in that moment, Obi knew that he couldn't shoot Ikenna. Instead, he holstered his gun and took a step back, his eyes never leaving Ikenna's face. "Let's talk about this," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "Let's figure out what's going on and see if we can find a way to help you." Ikenna's eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment, it looked like he was going to bolt. But then, something seemed to click into place, and he nodded slowly. "Okay," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll talk." As Obi led Ikenna to a nearby bench, he couldn't help but wonder what had driven the young man to such desperation. What had pushed him to the point where he felt like he had no other options? And what would it take to help him turn his life around? These were questions that Obi would have to answer in the days and weeks to come. But for now, he was determined to help Ikenna, to give him a second chance. And as he looked into the young man's eyes, he saw a glimmer of hope, a spark of possibility that refused to be extinguished. As Obi and Ikenna sat down on the bench, Obi couldn't help but notice the look of weariness in Ikenna's eyes. It was as if he was waiting for Obi to turn on him, to reveal his true intentions. But Obi's expression was calm and gentle, his eyes filled with a deep concern for the young man. "So, Ikenna," Obi said, his voice soft and soothing. "Tell me what's going on. What's driving you to desperation?" Ikenna looked down at his feet, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I don't know where to start," he muttered. Obi nodded understandingly. "Start wherever you feel comfortable," he said. "I'm here to listen." Ikenna took a deep breath and began to speak, his words stumbling out in a rush. "I've been struggling to survive for a long time," he said. "My parents died when I was young, and I had to fend for myself. I've been working odd jobs and trying to make ends meet, but it's hard. Sometimes I don't even have enough money to buy food." Obi's expression softened as he listened to Ikenna's story. He could see the pain and the struggle in the young man's eyes, and he knew that he wasn't lying. Ikenna was telling the truth, and Obi believed him. "I'm sorry to hear that," Obi said, his voice filled with empathy. "It can't have been easy for you." Ikenna shook his head. "It's been tough," he said. "But I've been trying to make the best of it. I've been looking for work, trying to find a way to support myself. But it's hard, and sometimes I feel like I've got no one to turn to." Obi nodded understandingly. He knew what it was like to struggle, to feel like you had no one to turn to. He had been in tough situations before, and he knew how hard it was to get back on your feet. "I'm here to help you, Ikenna," Obi said, his voice firm but gentle. "I want to help you get back on your feet. But you need to promise me one thing." "What's that?" Ikenna asked, looking up at Obi with a mixture of curiosity and weariness. "You need to promise me that you'll work with me," Obi said. "That you'll do your part to turn your life around. Can you do that for me?" Ikenna nodded slowly, a look of determination in his eyes. "I'll do it," he said. "I'll work with you." "Thank you, Obi." As Obi looked at Ikenna, he felt a sense of hope. He knew that the road ahead would be tough, but he also knew that Ikenna was willing to work hard. And with his help, Obi was confident that Ikenna could turn his life around. But as they sat there, Obi couldn't shake off the feeling that there was more to Ikenna's story than he was letting on. He seemed like a complex person, with layers of emotions and motivations that Obi couldn't quite understand. "Tell me, Ikenna," Obi said, his voice probing gently. "What's the worst part about your situation? What's the thing that's been weighing on your mind?" Ikenna looked down at his feet, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I don't know," he muttered. "I just feel like I've let everyone down. My parents, my friends. I feel like I'm a failure." Obi nodded understandingly. He knew what it was like to feel like a failure, to feel like you had let everyone down. But he also knew that it wasn't the end of the world. "Ikenna, you're not a failure," Obi said, his voice firm but gentle. "You're just struggling. And struggling is okay. It's how we respond to our struggles that defines us." Ikenna looked up at Obi, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Do you really think so?" he asked. Obi nodded. "I do," he said. "And I'm here to help you, Ikenna. I'm here to help you get back on your feet." As Obi looked at Ikenna, he knew that he had made the right decision. He had decided to help the young man, to give him a second chance. And as he watched Ikenna's face light up with hope, he knew that it would be worth it. As news of Obi's kindness towards Ikenna spread throughout the village, the community began to rally around them. The villagers, who had previously been wary of Ikenna, started to see him in a new light. They would nod at him in passing, or offer a smile, and some even stopped to talk to him. Obi's decision to help Ikenna had sparked a chain reaction of kindness and compassion in the village. People began to see that everyone deserves a second chance, and that kindness can go a long way in changing someone's life. The villagers would often gather around Obi and Ikenna, listening to their story and offering words of encouragement. They would praise Obi for his kindness, and tell him what a good role model he was for the younger generation. "Obi, you're a true hero," one of the villagers would say. "You're showing us that kindness and compassion can make a real difference in people's lives." Obi would smile humbly, feeling a sense of pride and satisfaction. He knew that he had made a positive impact on Ikenna's life, and that was all that mattered. As the days turned into weeks, Ikenna began to flourish. He started working odd jobs in the village, and slowly began to rebuild his life. The villagers would often see him smiling, or laughing with Obi, and they would nod in approval. "Ikenna's turning his life around," they would say. "And it's all thanks to Obi's kindness." The villagers would often gather to praise Obi for his actions. They would tell stories of how he had helped Ikenna, and how Ikenna was now a valued member of the community. "Obi's a true leader," one of the villagers would say. "He's showing us that we can make a difference in people's lives, just by being kind and compassionate." Obi would listen to their praise, feeling a sense of gratitude and humility. He knew that he had done something good, something that had positively impacted the community. as the community rallied around Obi and Ikenna, the village began to transform. People started to see the good in each other, and they began to support one another. The village became a more harmonious and compassionate place, and Obi's kindness had sparked a chain reaction of good deeds. The villagers would often thank Obi for his kindness, and tell him how much he had inspired them. "You're a true role model, Obi," they would say. "You're showing us that kindness and compassion can make a real difference in people's lives." Obi would smile, feeling a sense of pride and satisfaction. He knew that he had made a positive impact on the community, and that was all that mattered. As the days turned into weeks, Obi's legend grew in the village. People would talk about his kindness and compassion, and how he had helped Ikenna turn his life around. The villagers would look up to Obi as a role model, and strive to emulate his kindness and compassion. And Ikenna, the young man who had once been on the brink of despair, was now a valued member of the community. He had found a sense of purpose and belonging, and he was grateful to Obi for giving him a second chance. The story of Obi and Ikenna would be told and retold in the village for generations to come, a reminder of the power of kindness and compassion to transform lives and communities. Years went by, and the village of Amah continued to flourish. The legacy of Obi's kindness had left a lasting impact on the community, and people continued to strive to emulate his compassion and empathy. Ikenna, the young man who had been given a second chance, had become a successful and respected member of the community. He had started his own business, and was known for his kindness and generosity. The villagers would often tell stories of Obi's kindness, and how it had changed their lives. They would speak of the ripple effect of his actions, and how it had inspired them to be kinder and more compassionate towards one another. As Obi looked out at the village, he felt a sense of pride and satisfaction. He knew that his actions had made a positive impact on the community, and that was all that mattered. The legacy of Obi's kindness continued to inspire future generations. Children would learn about his story in school, and be encouraged to emulate his compassion and empathy. The villagers would look up to Obi as a role model, and strive to follow in his footsteps. Years later, when Obi passed away, the village mourned the loss of a true hero. But they also celebrated his life, and the impact he had had on their community. They knew that his legacy would live on, and that his kindness would continue to inspire future generations. Ikenna, who had been given a second chance by Obi, was one of the many people who would never forget the impact that Obi had had on his life. He would often tell stories of Obi's kindness, and how it had changed his life. "Obi saw something in me that I didn't see in myself," Ikenna would say. "He saw a person worthy of kindness and compassion, and he treated me with dignity and respect. I'll never forget what he did for me, and I'll always strive to pay it forward." The story of Obi's kindness would live on, a reminder to future generations of the power of compassion and empathy. It would inspire people to be kinder, more understanding, and more compassionate towards one another. And as the years went by, the village of Amah would continue to thrive, a testament to the enduring legacy of Obi's kindness. The villagers would look up at the sky, and remember the man who had changed their lives. They would smile, knowing that Obi's kindness would always be a part of their community. And so, the story of Obi's kindness would come full circle, a reminder of the impact one person can have on the lives of others. It would be a beacon of hope, shining brightly for all to see, and inspiring future generations to follow in Obi's footsteps. The legacy of Obi's kindness would live on, a lasting reminder of the power of compassion and empathy to transform lives and communities. And the village of Amah would forever be grateful for the impact that Obi had had on their lives. The moral lesson of Obi's kindness. As the sun set over the village of Amah, the villagers would often gather to share stories and reflect on the lessons they had learned. One of the most popular stories was that of Obi's kindness to Ikenna, the young man who had been struggling to survive. The villagers would marvel at Obi's compassion and empathy, and how it had transformed Ikenna's life. They would talk about the ripple effect of Obi's kindness, and how it had inspired others to be kinder and more compassionate towards one another. But the story of Obi's kindness held a deeper moral lesson, one that would resonate with people for generations to come. It was a lesson about the power of kindness to transform lives and communities, and the importance of treating others with dignity and respect. The story taught that kindness is not just a feeling, but a choice. It's a choice to put others before ourselves, to listen to their struggles, and to offer a helping hand. It's a choice to see the humanity in others, and to treat them with compassion and empathy.